This is a podcast from BFM 89.9, the business station. This is a podcast from BFM 89.9, the business station.
Connecting the dots for businesses today with today's top story with Celcom Digi.
7:48, Monday the 24th of July, and you're listening to The Morning Run. Now, almost 10 million voters will be eligible to cast their ballots in this upcoming state elections. But state polls have historically suffered from low voter turnout, with Bersih warning that it could be as low as 50 to 60%.
So every vote will matter as each contesting party faces its own challenges. The PHBN coalition faces the acid test of winning Malay votes as UMNO fights to retain support from its own members, while Perikatan Nasional continues its efforts to target more voters that are growing frustrated with the Mandani government.
And Muda also faces a big test as the party is going it alone as a third alternative in the polls. So how will voter sentiment move in this new and changed political landscape?
We get some insights with this with Dr. James Chin, Professor of Asian Studies at the University of Tasmania. Good morning, James, and always good to speak to you. Now, let's start with the candidate list that was released by PKR and Amanah over the weekend. Any surprises in that name, among the names?
Good morning. So normally at this stage when they release the candidates list, of course, some of the long-term people be dropped. For example, Elizabeth Wong and the rest. So, but the important thing to remember is that we should not get too excited over the first list that was released, because we know on nomination there will always be last-minute changes. Basically, they're releasing the list not only to show that they're well prepared for the upcoming state election, but more importantly, they want to gauge the reaction. So I think more than 90% of those on the list will eventually stand, but there will be a significant number of changes at the last minute.
James, can you glean any sort of strategy that these parties are, gunning for with the list that you've seen so far?
Look, in terms of the strategy, there's really not much of a strategy to talk of. Basically, we already know in advance what every group is playing up. Muda, the third force, as you mentioned. The keyword is the third force, the younger generation. Give us a chance. That's basically the campaign theme. PAS is basically, this government is not Islamic enough, it's not Malay-centric enough. And now we got Dr. Mahathir on board. So basically what we are promising you is that we are all anti-government, anti-unity, anti-Anwar coalition. Everybody who's against this government is on our side. And we represent the true Malay majority in Malaysia. On the government side, of course, the big argument is that we are the real unity government. We've got people from every ethnic group, from every region in Malaysia that are represented. We've got international credibility. Anwar is very well known internationally. And it takes time for us to deliver. But so far, we've been delivering. Look at our budget, look at our subsidies. Everything is going well. And if you vote for so-called green wave, then we're back to square one. So I think everybody understands the stakes that's before us. And I think the lines increasingly are becoming very clear. The big difference this time, I suspect, is that even though a lot of people said that for state elections, state issues are very important, I suspect for this time, the Anwar factor or the federal factor is slightly more important compared to previous state elections.
So you see this as a referendum to the Anwar Ibrahim administration, and what are the repercussions if it's status quo, like 3 states versus 3 states, or if there's any swing?
So I'm not the only one who says that it's an indirect referendum. I think that's how everybody in Malaysia sees it. You asked a really, really important question about whether if it is 3 plus 3, the status quo, nothing will change. I think the smart way of looking at this election is not really how many states people win. It is the pattern of the Malay votes. I think even you understand that, most people will tell you that the non-Malay votes in Selangor, Penang, and all the other states, they're more or less locking with Pakatan or BN. It is the Malay vote that's important. Because as I said, the key argument on the Perikatan side is that this is not a government that represents the majority Malays. It really doesn't matter how you look at the states. The reality is that this unity government did not get the majority of the Malay votes. So Anwar and Barisan will have to claw back the Malay votes.
And do you see that Malay support in these three states, the three PH states, even narrowing this time in the state elections then?
I think it's too early. The sort of noises I hear from the ground is that it looks very much like Perikatan has the momentum. But the important thing, as you mentioned at the start of your program, is the turnout rate, but more importantly, who is turning out. So the key, if you look at the last November's election, was actually young people coming out quite substantially in the rural Malay areas. And the interesting thing was that they all went for the green wave. So we have to look carefully at, whether these young people are going to come out again and who they're going to vote.
So far, there appears to be no change to the Menteri Besars if the coalition retain their respective states. Was this a surprise, or is this again all about maintaining the status quo?
Look, the reality is that you only change the Menteri Besar if they become very controversial or they make what they call major political mistakes. In the case of Selangor and Negeri Sembilan, Penang, by and large, I think the general consensus is that the Menteri Besar has not made any major political blunders. So there's really no need to create controversy if there's nothing to be created. In the case of Kedah, although on paper he sounds very controversial, he creates a lot of negative publicity, but you have to remember the sort of publicity he's creating is actually good for his support base. So even though he's controversial in the eyes of the non-Malays, right, on the Malay ground, he's actually quite popular. So in some ways, there's really no reason to replace any of the Menteri Besars. The other thing you need to remember is that even if you promise to appoint somebody a Menteri Besar, right, everything depends on the results, right? So they can always change at the last minute. So that's the reason why I said earlier, don't get too excited about the nominations list. Yes, it's true, 90% of those names will end up as candidates, but there will be some last-minute high-profile changes.
Yeah, so UMNO members have started defecting to Perikatan Nasional in Machang in Kelantan. Can we expect more exodus of UMNO members across the states, and to what extent can PN capture these votes to their cause?
So my take is that when people announce defections at this period, which is the campaign period more or less, right, this is more of a PR exercise. So it's not only one direction. I can guarantee you before August the 12th, there'll be announcement on both sides that people are moving across. A very prominent member has just announced or will officially photo op opportunity. A senior Malay Bersatu figure has joined DAP. So it works both ways. Like I said, this is all about the campaign now. So some of these people, so-called defections, right, they actually defected a long time ago. It's just that now they're doing it, for the photo op because they need to show that things are moving on the ground.
James, I want to talk about UMNO. How well do you think they will do these state elections?
To be honest, I really don't know because I got it wrong the last time because they did not get the money and the resources to the ground on time. I hope they don't repeat the mistakes. Now, having said that, the problem this time is that UMNO, again, for whatever reason, have decided to chosen a lot of new people to run the campaign. I would have thought that he'll go back to the, there's a group of people who always work in the background who are very good at campaigning, who can get the vote out and make sure that people vote for you. But whatever reason, Zahid has decided to go with completely new team. I've been told many times, more than 50% of the people from the UMNO side are new people running the elections. To me, that is a silly mistake and it's always very dangerous to go with new people.
Okay, and what about this voter transferability, which is what PH is hoping to capture from the traditional BN voter? Is that going to happen in state elections? Is it too simplistic for us to assume that the BN voter will now vote for PH?
I think it depends on which states you're talking about. I think this is probably true for Penang, Selangor, and Perak. The other states, I'm not so sure. So it really depends on the locality. And also the most important thing in terms of the transfer of votes is what sort of relationship the local branches have. You'll be surprised in some areas, right? For example, PH and the UMNO people have been working quite closely. Part of it is because they worked well previously in the past. And also a lot of these people, the political class, they know each other very well. So it depends on which locality you're talking about. I think it'll be a mistake to suggest that it'll be across the board. But I do believe that the message has really gone down to the ground. I think everybody on the Pakatan and Barisan side understands that if they lose out this term, right, the government may fall. So the stakes are very high, and there is a very strong incentive for them to vote for what they call their old enemies, who are now friends. I think the term is frenemies.
It's a good term, James.
I've got a few of them too.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time. That was Dr. James Chin, Professor of Asian Studies at the University of Tasmania, telling us that, we've got the candidate list from PKR and Amanah. Likely 90% of it won't see any changes, but we might get some surprises come this Saturday.
I think manifestos are also just as important, but like James was saying, the photo opportunity, it's more about what you are seen to be doing, rather than what you are actually doing. That's important to people. I mean, we had like a whole host of photo ops over the weekend. Dr. Mahathir Mohamad showing his face at a PAS event, wearing the PAS colours, no less.
Hasn't he been friends with almost every coalition and party in, as far as I can remember?
He's in his 90s. I'm sure he would have done the rounds.
Now, one of those interesting candidates that's already received a huge pushback is for the Pematang seat, where Muhammad Yahya Matsri was a former convict of a crime for political foundation. He was charged about 2016, I think. So that could be a name that could be seeing some changes this Saturday.
Okay, but I think what's important is going forward, whether we move away from personality politics to policy politics. But unfortunately, in Malaysia, that doesn't seem to be the case. And I'm also curious whether this time round, right, the campaigning will really take off in terms of the social media. Because that's what we really did see in GE15, where the surprise losses were a lot to do with those incumbents not taking the social media track when it came to like attracting their voters.
And, the fact that TikTok can get their message through in such a short time also shows the short attention span with a lot of voters. So if you can capture the interest of those voters within those few first few seconds, it's really, really important the deal is done. And a lot of voter turnout is another issue that we need to keep our eye on as well.
So the other thing to look at is Muda, which James referred to as the third force. Now, whether it really be a force or not in the upcoming elections is still very questionable, because they might end up splitting the votes, or they might end up not making a dent at all.
We will see, because to be fair, Muda is a very young political party, very, very young. They announced the creation of the party here on the Breakfast Grill, I think 3 years ago. They're making some headway, definitely getting the right headlines. Definitely their candidate list also, I see on social media, a lot of contention. Some people not very happy with the names. But Malaysia, in terms of our democracy, we're richer for it, actually, when we have more political parties and different voices offering alternative views. The question we have is, as a government, whether we can actually get used to this and have continuous bipartisan support for in policy issues that truly matter. Yeah. But I think state elections, definitely, we will be reporting it throughout. We will definitely be on air on the 12th. So do tune in. We're likely to be on air starting from 6 p.m. Till, I guess, all the results are out. That will be 12th of August. That's a Saturday evening.
A lot of analyses that you should pay attention to as well.
Up next, of course, we have the 8 a.m. news bulletin, followed by the Breakfast Grill, where I sit down with Noh Hisham Hussein, Chief Strategy Officer at EPF. Keep it here, BFM 89.9.
Stay informed, top story, and digitalize your business today with Celcom Digi.
You have been listening to a podcast from BFM 89.9, the business station. For more stories of the same kind, download the BFM app.